Che magari è uguale. No, questa
All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the session dedicated towards a broader paradigm for energy security. Energy, we've been discussing energy along the years here at MED. It's always a center at MED. We discuss energy as a mean of creating cooperation between the two shores of the Mediterranean to foster economic growth, to fight poverty, to create a positive agenda. But that was a time of relatively abundant and secure energy supply. The world has changed since the outbreak of the war, since the invasion of Russia in Ukraine. We are facing dramatic threats to energy supply and a wild ride in prices of energy. Now, how about what the future lies in from this perspective? Priorities has clearly shifted towards securing an affordable and reliable availability of energy without harming our climate action goals. So in this panel, we're going to discuss how government officials of producers countries, together with the leaders of major oil companies and experts in renewables, are managing the gap between urgent needs of securing supply of energy and longer-term green targets in terms of sustainability. Let me introduce our guests, starting with Mohamed Arkab, who's Minister of Energy and Mines in Algeria. Welcome. Also to Mohamed bin Mubarak bin Daina, Minister of Oil and Environment in Bahrain. We have Francesco La Camera, Director General of the International Renewable Energy Agency, Claudio Descalzi, CEO of ENI, and Sheikh Nabaf Saud Nasir Al Sabah, CEO of the Kuwait Petroleum Corporation. Welcome, everyone. Let's start with an applause to start with some energy. The meeting. Minister Arkab, let me start with you, because since the beginning and the outbreak of the last crisis and the war, I know there was a long queue of European leaders and oil companies manager in front of your door knocking and asking for more gas supplies from Algeria. How are you and how far can you go in replying to the need of European countries to diversify their supplies, and how do you see the hydrocarbons situations in your country?
Merci pour cette question. Et tout d'abord,
Thank you very much for this question. And first of all, I would like to thank the Italian authorities for inviting me, and it's an honor for me to participate to this meeting. As you said in the introduction, Algeria has done a lot for energy security of Europe. We have a significant program which is well structured for the whole production of energy in Algeria. So first of all, with our European partners, and especially with Eni, we have worked a lot for the development, and we will continue in this partnership policy. We will continue to work for the new law on hydrocarbons in Europe in order to implement it and to find new partners and specialists in this field. And we are currently at the 5th contract that has been signed in order to increase the production of the product sold. So I want to thank Eni, which have worked with us in close collaboration on a completely new experience. So we signed a contract with Eni 5 months ago, and we started to produce in November, and we have implemented new quantities of gas. And this is thanks to the infrastructures that are existing in Algeria, and also due to the transport to the final customer. So we are currently following the strategy of partnership. So we search for new partners, and mostly European partners. We are currently facing some issues. Maybe we'll talk about it later. And we will see how we can strengthen strengthen our partnerships, but we also need fundings, and we need to search for this energy, and we need to invest a lot and search for energy. So it's an industry that requires many efforts, equipments, and fundings, and also a lot of time. So in this way, we also need to make sure that we can increase and especially gas in Algeria and also for Europe.
What's your take on this? How do you see the fact that there was a lack of investments that created a very mismatch, a very dramatic mismatch between supply and demand at the beginning of this crisis? And how do you see the current situation and the future in this sense?
I think, thank you very much for having me here on this panel. And I would like to extend my colleague thanks to the Italian government for this invitation. I think the situation we are in here today has different reasons. One of the reasons is the lack of investments on any fossil fuel. This has been done because of the challenges we face on the climate change. We are, and the financial sector also has targets that to go to a net zero in 2050. So they put a plan to reduce these investments on any fossil fuel. So there is a lack of investments. There is a lack also on the refining products, not just the raw materials. And there is dependent on certain countries on the sources of this fossil fuel. So the diversification is not there for the resources. We have to admit that I think everybody is evaluating their plan to achieve either the targets for climate change, but to make sure they also continue supporting their own governments and people with affordable fossil fuel, because fossil fuel is part of the energy mix now. It has the biggest part of the energy mix. We're encouraging renewables, and I think everybody is going to this way. It is going to be part of this energy mix. New innovations, either of other sources of energy like the hydrogen, will be part of the energy mix, but it's not now. So now we need to be prepared to make these sources of energy affordable, sustainable, and affordable and sustainable, but also more efficient towards the climate change. So we need to also consider by development the emissions we have. And that's why I think the fossil fuel will be more attractive if we think about the technology on carbon capture, like what we are doing now with Eni. It's going to be one of the main sources and continue like this.
We'll talk more about renewables and sustainability in the longer term, but Claudio Descalzi, since the beginning of the war, you've been gas hunting kind of globally, searching here and there, not just Algeria, that has been already mentioned. How do you feel at the level of security in terms of energy supply that we reached, looking at the winter, but also looking at next winter, 2023 winter?
Thank you. First of all, I was not hunting and searching gas just after the war, because otherwise,
that's your job.
Otherwise you cannot find anything, because you have to invest years in advance. At least you don't have all the infrastructure lying in Algeria, where you can drill and then tie in and put in production. But otherwise, you have to invest, take a risk in exploration, take a risk in development, then develop and put in production. That takes years. So going back to the discussion, because the main point is not how we have found the gas. I can answer immediately. We had already before this gas. But the issue is that for years, we said that at least in Europe, the gas demand went down. So our hypothesis is that gas is going down. So we have other energy vector to replace it. And we discovered that the gas demand, hydrocarbon demand, but especially gas demand, is inelastic. We are consuming in Europe the same amount of gas that we consume 10 years ago, 400 billion cubic meter per year. The same in Italy, around 75 billion cubic meter per year. And we also pushed to replace worldwide coal and the gas demand. And we see China 10 years ago, the consumption was 80 billion cubic meter per year. Now there are 650 billion cubic meter of gas per year. So the gas is increasing, and in the mature country like us is inelastic. And we reduce our investment because we thought that we can use other kind of sources. And now, already before the war, we had problems, you know, in terms of
So that was
cost,
a mistake.
and now suddenly we lost 150, 160 billion cubic meter coming from Russia. So the issue is not easy to solve. And the equation that we put in place a few years ago, the equation is environmental sustainability, and that is the variable, critical and crucial variable. But we thought that we could solve this equation with this just one variable. We have other variables, and the other variable is energy security and what we can call affordability in a general sense, but for Europe, competitiveness, because our industry pay gas 7 times so what we are paying in the US or in other countries, and electricity even more. So our industry, more taxation and more ETS, the tax on the CO2. Everything is correct, but it's only Europe. So our industry is becoming smaller because they have higher costs. Mm-hmm. So all this kind of situation, we have to wake up and understand that we need different kind of pillars. We cannot just talk about one thing and neglecting all the other issues. Otherwise, we destroy ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that is what is happening.
What are the other pillars we should look at?
I told you, energy security. We never talk about a plan of energy security in Europe. We don't even have in Italy, because we thought that we can always have gas. We always can any kind of energy. It's not like that. Europe is a big market, but there is no energy. How you can live without energy? There is no food, there is no health, there is no education, there is no infrastructure without energy. We can realize that. We cannot cover everything with renewables. We invest a lot in renewables, but we cannot cover the hard industry just with renewables. So the environment is a priority, but the energy security is a second priority, and the affordability, that means for Europeans, mm-hmm. the competitiveness of the industry is the other priority. So in the equation, we have 3 variables. And so to solve this equation, it is a little bit more complicated than with one variable.
Absolutely. I'll get back to that with you in a moment, but Sheikh Nawaz Nasir Al Sabah, what's the Kuwait Petroleum Corporation vision of the current situation? And also, as Claudio Descalzi said, Europe has woke up the hard way and discovered that needs more diversification, at least, to get to security of energy.
Thank you. From our perspective, and this is, I think, a perspective that's shared across the stage here today, the energy transition has to be an energy transition. It cannot be an energy switch. You cannot overnight decide that hydrocarbons are unacceptable, and therefore you will have a complete replacement of hydrocarbons along with renewables that would be coming at some point with a vast distribution network simply by legislating it. It has to be backed up with investments. What we're seeing right now is we are, as KPC, moving into this energy transition with a vision that at the ultimate end of any energy transition, as Minister Dana said, hydrocarbons will be part of that mix. Mm-hmm. And the question becomes, whose hydrocarbons will be part of that mix? And our position is ours will be, because we are not only the lowest cash cost oil barrel in the world, but we're also the lowest energy intensity, carbon intensity barrel in the world. So the CO2 emissions associated with the production of a Kuwaiti barrel of oil are right now the lowest in the world, and we will push them towards zero by 2050. Second point there is that the crux that we find ourselves in, as you said at the beginning of the session, due to a lack of investment, really goes back to the time when oil prices collapsed in 2014, when exploration budgets dried up around the world. People stopped investing in exploration. And as you know, the life cycle of an exploration well is about 7 years from the time you make an exploration discovery until you can bring it to market. So all the oil that was supposed to have been discovered by 2015, for example, was supposed to be hitting the market 7 years later, which magically is today. And that's why we have this energy crunch. So what we're doing in KPC, though, is investing through that cycle. We are increasing our production capacity. We are also investing in, we've invested now 30 billion euro into building a new refinery in Kuwait and upgrading the existing refineries so that we can produce ultra low sulfur fuel oil and provide Europe with that. We've already provided 1 million tons of diesel and jet fuel at the end of by the second half of this year. And next year we will double that those shipments to Europe, because we recognize that there is a diesel crunch as well in Europe. So we want to keep Europe moving, and we want to keep Europe flying. And that's why we are confident that the ultra low sulfur distillates that we are producing now through our investments over the past few years will provide Europe and the rest of the world with eco-friendly fuels through this energy transition.
All right, Francesco La Camera, some says that high energy fossil fuel prices are renewable best friends because they trigger new investments into this. How do you see the transition pace, and what's the role that renewables can have in securing energy security in the future?
So, Andrea, the first point is that the energy transition is in place. Last year, 81% of new installed capacity was renewable. In the last, this is happening from the last 9 years, and the gap between installed capacity of fossil fuels plant and renewables is growing year after year. In the MENA region, there is no doubt that producing electricity by renewables is the most competitive way today. There is no doubt that this is the most economic way to produce power in the MENA region. You have touched about the energy security. I think that the Ukrainian crisis makes very clear that this concept has to be, how to say, confronted with a new narrative, because you know, energy security was linked in the past, starting from the energy crisis in '72, last century, on the oil demand, oil and gas demand, and others. The fact is that we have suddenly discovered that 80% of the country in the world are fossil fuel dependent, and there was no way, and there is so difficult to react to the shock that's happening. This is giving a new strength to the development of renewables, because you know every one of us know that it's the cheapest, is the cleanest, the one that is impacting more on job. Just in the MENA region, in the last 5 years, 2 million jobs for 500, so increasing 4 times in 5 years, the work on the jobs in renewables. Now it's very evident that the research on reliance and affordability is in diversify the supply. So the many actors we have on the market, the more the market will provide to be resilient. So also this push that we see on hydrogen is because hydrogen can be produced everywhere. Renewables can be produced everywhere. And so this means having more actors in the market, so more capacity to react to shocks. No? It will not be a pure competitive market, but it will be a market where it will be impossible to cartelize, for example, the energy, or in some way use the energy in these geopolitical challenges that we have in front of us. So in my point of view, responding to your question, I think that now the political community is believing that renewables could be the way for ensure more energy security. And there is also another aspect that I wish to, I think that I agree with all I've been saying. So fossil fuel will not discover by a switch. The fact that as we have, if we want to be very simplified, is we have 3/4 to 1/4, 3/4 of energy coming from fossil fuel today, the other quarter from renewables. Then when we talk, and I finish, I want to be brief, because also we have to find a way to have a narrative that fit with the climate change fight. So we know that for getting to the 1.5 or 2 degrees, we have to change. This 3/4 has to come from renewables, so the other quarter from fossil fuel in 2050. We have in our scenario, the ARENA scenario, still we have fossil fuel, we have gas, we have also a small portion of nuclear, but the major part of the electricity will become from 90% of renewables.
But Francesco La Camera, what kind of investment would be needed to get to that target?
We have launched our number, that means 5.7 trillion per year globally. Honestly, we have discussed this 2 days ago. So there is no doubt the direction where we are going, Andrea. So we are going to a new energy system. And then possibly in the second round, I can talk about the barrier that we have ongoing to the new system. But the fact is the scale and the speed of this transition is not putting us in the capacity to respect the Paris Agreement goal. In our point of view, the 1.5 will disappear in a couple of years.
Minister Arkab, how do you see Algeria in this new energy system, as Francesco La Camera was saying? What your plans are in terms of renewables? There's plenty of solar power, but also that could be used for creating hydrogen in your country. Do you have any concrete plan to go also in that direction?
Si vous permettez, laissez-moi revenir rapidement sur la sécurité.
So I just would like to go back to energy security, first of all, because I just would like to add something concerning this very important topic. So when it comes to energy security, from our point of view, we do not only mention the supply, but also the structures, and we have to make the sustainability safer. So we needed to turn the market into a safe market, and we needed to better understand the needs of energy. What we are currently seeing is that there is a real problem when it comes to sustainability of energy, and investments from companies, from oil and gas companies are really heavy and important, but we also need a long-term vision. We needed to make sure that those investments will be carefully used in the future within this new energetic system. So if we talk about energy safety, then we of course needed to talk about the safety of the supplies, the safety of the structures, the safety also when it comes to the sustainability of the usage of energy. And going back to the question concerning renewable energies in Algeria, we have important programs when it comes to energy transition. First of all, the usage of the photovoltaic energy on a wide scale. And this is also part of the actual government plans. So we aim at increasing by the end of 2037 the number of megawatts produced with this renewable source. And we also want to focus on energy sustainability in order to better use energy, thanks to some very specific and important programs that will be put in place within the entire country. We will also improve the electrical grid, and we are trying to modernize and to turn our grids and systems into updated ones, focusing on these technological evolutions and innovations. And then another project that has been recently adopted by the Council of the Government concerns a better usage of hydrogen, so that we will have, again, another important program. We are now looking for some pilot programs together with some partners and pilot sites in order to better understand how to use this technology and how to put in place this program. And our goal is to produce energy from hydrogen and to provide hydrogen to Europe and energy to Europe, of course. Maybe we will put in place also a third program. Why not? Because there is a huge demand in this, but we hope to become important players when it comes to the Mediterranean region concerning renewable energies. And Algeria has very important capacities and skills when it comes to renewable energies, because we can produce more than 2,000 kilowatt per hour thanks to renewable energies. This is possible thanks to the different operators within the renewable energy sector. So we have the rooms and the spaces to use, and we have the capacities actually for the renewable sources. And we hope, together with the support of the European countries, to invest even more actually in this domain. So only 200 kilometers divide Algeria from Italy and from Italy and Spain. So maybe we can also export our energy so that we will be able to assure the sustainability of energy.
Mix looking at the future. What do you think Bahrain is in its road to carbon neutrality, and what's the projects you're working on?
Well, Bahrain is a small island, so it's not like Algeria, they have a lot of space. So this is one of the main challenges we're facing with the renewables. So we set up a target to be 40% of our electricity renewables by 2035, but it is a challenge because of the size of the land. Maybe wind and can do this. But I think we have to differentiate between the renewables as a source of electricity and renewables as a source of power. So the sources of power, still there is a lot of need for different kind of energies. I know the IAEA now is promoting a small nuclear plant. But after Fukushima and Chernobyl, I think a lot of people are really concerned about the safety. The energy mix is not going to be easy. But we believe cleaning the fossil fuel is our main pillars on our energy security. We think we will continue using fossil fuel, but we'll work more on making this fossil fuel cleaner, either by afforestations. We set up targets for afforestations and mangrove transplants to be quadruple the size that we do have now. So the offsets is one of the main things that we're thinking of. Carbon capture is another thing. We're waiting to the technology of hydrogen to revive, to be cost effective. The prices now is too high, I think, but the renewables is challenging for us.
Claudio Descalzi, talking about the Eni strategy and Eni plans, how are you building a sustainable energy security looking at the future? You said before we need a security plan, a serious one. What's your ideas and what's your actions are?
So we were talking about solve this equation with different variables. Clearly, we start very in advance, and one of the tools to solve this equation is technology. So from one side, as a consumers, European consumers, we have to diversify the source of gas in this case, but also from the other side, we don't have to think about a fight between different kind of technologies, renewables against gas, or against CCS, or against circular economy, or against nuclear fusion. At this stage, we have to use all what we have. So I think that clearly, as they say, the panelists cannot switch from one energy to another energy. We saw in the last 150 years that coal is still the first in electricity, 35%. And then Coal got 50% in 60 years of coverage, oil in 60 years, 40%, but nobody replaced the other one. Gas in 50 years, 24% of the market. Renewable in 25 years. In the energy sector, 3%. In the electricity, worldwide, 8%. In Europe, much more than 20%, but depend on the region. So the story and the history taught us that we have to integrate. So from one side, the transition means to decarbonize what is coming from hydrocarbon, as the minister said. So we have to capture CO2. From the other side, to introduce new technology. And we must be neutral from a technology point of view. We have to use everything we have, everything that can save the climate or save the environment. From the other side, we have to save also our energy security, because we are growing in terms of population, in terms of needs. So I think we must be reasonable, and technology is the first answer. And what we are doing, we are developing a lot of new technologies to match the target of by 2050 to be net zero.
Including testing a new nuclear kind of...
It's not fission. For us, there is no, we can say, radioactivity or waste material is a fusion. So is a magnetic field that contains the plasma to produce electricity. That is coming from water, like hydrogen. So it's heavy water, isotope of hydrogen that we use to produce heat, so the plasma, and produce steam and produce electricity. So it's the same kind of concept, different, that is hydrogen is coming from water.
Sheikh, KPC has petroleum in its brand name. How do you look at the future in 20, 25 years, as this council was mentioning, and how are you diversifying, investing strategically to position yourself in this new kind of energy era?
Sure. Looking at where we're going to be in the next couple of decades, as I said, we're going to be producing oil. And the last barrel of oil produced on Earth is going to come from our region. We want to be that last barrel, for the simple reasons, as I said, on cash cost and also on carbon intensity, but also on what we're doing in Kuwait, as some of my co-panelists were saying, to do offsets and to decarbonize our production. For example, on the offsets, certainly mangroves are very important, and in fact they're about the most efficient plants at sucking carbon out of the atmosphere, as you can find, and easiest to grow. But we're also using photovoltaic cells to power up our electric submersible pumps. So as we've been producing oil for 80 years, we'll be continuing to produce oil for that much time into the future. But the cost will be greater. The energy intensity will be greater. So how do we offset that energy intensity over time? We've rolled out a pilot project to build up photovoltaic cells to power up the electric submersible pumps that we're going to be needing more and more as our fields move from primary production into secondary and ultimately to tertiary production, which just requires more energy. So if we can offset the increased electricity usage by making that renewable, we're not increasing our carbon intensity of our barrel. Second, and by the way, we did that just by powering up 30 ESPs in our wells. We have over 1,000 wells in Kuwait. So just by 30 of those, our project there, we call it Sidra 500 because it is the environmental equivalent of planting 500,000 trees. So imagine if we roll that out across our fields. It is like a reforestation, essentially, on that side. Second, and this is one that I'm really very excited about, and it's not just carbon capture and storage. It's carbon capture, utilization, and storage using CO2 as part of our enhanced oil recovery scheme. So, as I said, as oil fields begin to age, they lose natural pressure, you need to inject either gas or water into the reservoir to maintain its pressure or sweep the oil. In the past, gas was relatively cheap and can be injected with no economic impact. Now, obviously, as we all know, gas is a very dear commodity. So we piloted a project where we take CO2 that would otherwise dissipate into the atmosphere, inject it in place of the gas into the reservoir, maintain the pressure in the reservoir to increase that production, and then free up that gas for something more valuable like petrochemicals creation or even power generation if you have to. That kills two birds with one stone. You take carbon that would have gone into the atmosphere and inject it, and then you also free up other types of fuels that can be used in a different capacity. And the third point is we're doing all of this by maintaining the investment that we always have to continue to maintain throughout this cycle, because we know that we will be here decades from now as one of the only producers, and certainly this region being the only producer.
Now, Francesco La Camera, these topics, energy security, transition, sustainability, were also at the center of COP27. And I assume you gentlemen, you were there in Sharm el-Sheikh. And my question is, how do you see the outcome of COP27 in terms also of securing the financing of these new investments that you've been talking about? And you mentioned a very large number, your estimates that the investment needed to sustain renewables. And where do you think they will come from? Is the private sector engaged, involved, or how do you see the future?
Very good question. First, Andrea, I recognize that I didn't thank the organizer for inviting me here. You know, feeling home, I forgot to do this. I was hosting some way because I'm in my town. So thanks for having me here today. Concerning your question, there are, first, I wish to promote the work of ARENA. We have launched our Energy Transition Accelerating Financing. So we have been able to raise 1 billion through the Abu Dhabi Fund for Development, through Masdar, through the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank. So I really call for present us projects, and we will try to do our best to have your project to be funded. Naturally, here we are talking about small, medium-sized project, not very big, because we want to spread in our membership, but it's an opportunity. And being here, I think that it's good that in this dialogue, there is this piece of information that's come to the meeting. Concerning, there are some positive aspects. Okay, the breakthrough on the loss and damage, but there will be part of the negotiation in the years to come because they have to be operationalized, I think, but it's a good thing in some way. The other thing that I appreciated, the ambition and the political commitment were not there. So this could be less positive. But in the same moment, we have seen that the Egyptian presidency has been able to put more emphasis on the implementation. So in more concrete attitude that I hope this will follow also in the COP28. Concerning from where the money has to come from, generally speaking, what we will work in ARENA in the month to come is to try to change the narrative, because I think we have been using always the same words. So public-private partnership, reducing the cost of money, the risk in investment. But I don't see really that something is coming relevant. We think, and we have said very clear, that we need to rewrite the way the cooperation work. I don't think that, I think the MENA region is blessed in some way, and the leadership here demonstrate when you talk about the infrastructure, so they think that they want to be ready for the new energy system. But in fact, Africa, for example, is not ready. How you can have more renewables? The question is how change from from the supply to the demand, and there is the infrastructure. When we talk infrastructure, we talk about the physical infrastructure, we talk about the legal and policy infrastructure, we talk about the institutional infrastructure. Without this, there will be no possibility, because companies, they are ready to invest, but where they have to attach, how to say, attach is correct to say, they are producing. So there is today in Mali, for example, a small city, there is an overproduction of electricity in Mali. So the fact is that if we don't build infrastructure, we have no hope to be so fast as we need. I think I told you 2 days ago, we took 200 years to build the infrastructure that has been functional for this energy system. We have no time to lose if we want to have a new energy system coming. The infrastructure is crucial, and I think the Algerian minister is right that there is a privileged position of the North Africa and the region all, because there are already 5 pipelines from North Africa to Europe. But there is the possibility to go to electrify with net. Imagine they are building a new cable from Australia to Singapore. Europe is there, and Europe will never have the capacity to produce the electricity they need.
All right. Let me wrap it up, gentlemen, with a quick round on energy security and the current challenges for energy security. We are living unprecedented challenge in terms of also the energy market is under a huge stress. Gas and oil prices have decoupled. Europe came out just a few days ago with a tentative price cap on gas. The reaction of the market was gas prices went up. So how do you see from this standpoint what's going on, and how do you feel, Claudio Descalzi, about security for Europe looking ahead? Because yes, we're talking decades, but you mentioned the economy is facing a deep challenge, and industrials and SMEs are, facing terrible threats looking ahead.
Yes, look at the security of energy, or in this case also price. Clearly, we have to look at the short terms. So we continue to work on the transition, and now we have to find this gas. And the issue is the gas is not enough. We must have also in Europe the infrastructures, because we lost gas from pipe, and now we are getting gas from LNG. Clearly, Italy is in a different situation because it's well connected to North Africa, so we are well connected from Algeria. As the minister said, Algeria is really, in a sense, replacing somehow the Russian gas. And then we have Libya, where we're increasing production. Then we just we tap from Azerbaijan, but at the moment is a limit of about 7 to 8 billion cubic meters per year. And then we have LNG, but we don't have the capacity to receive all this LNG. We don't have all this capacity. So in the north of Europe, Germany, Holland is increasing, and Italy, we must have additional regasification capacity. So that is the first point.
How do you feel when you think?
Sorry.
No, what's going on?
No, sorry, because if they talk aloud,
okay,
listen to them,
please.
and I cannot talk.
Okay, yeah,
Sorry,
please be silent. Absolutely, okay.
No, sorry.
You were talking
I'm too
about...
direct, but...
no. You were talking about the need
I cannot
for...
listen everybody at the same time.
Regasifying.
No, I was talking about the regasification.
Yeah.
The issue is but the price is the other big problem. So how we can reduce this price? Through a cap, as a temporary solution, you don't solve the problem, because in any case, the issue is between the gap between supply and demand. So the only way to reduce price is that the supply is matching or overmatching the demand. So we must have a redundancy in terms of infrastructures and redundancy in terms of supply. But the problem is what my fellow colleagues here on the floor said. To do that, we have to make investment for the long term. What means 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and we have to recover this. But if gas is not in the energy mix of the future, who is going to invest in gas? For that reason, there is no new investment. So there is a situation where there is a mismatch between what we need in the present with gas, that is a long-term shot, infrastructure that are long-term shots, and the necessity to reduce the price. And the cap is not the cap is temporary, but it's not solving from the underlining the problem. So we have to work on this and put gas put gas in the long-term energy transition, is in our, coupled with other solutions, renewable first, clearly, but also the decarbonization of the hard-to-abate. So is really an equation where we need investment, we need energy, but first of all, we need competencies. So we must know about what we are talking. We are talking about something that we must know is a very complex issue, the energy issue, because there are investment by technology. And now the mix is much more complex than before. So we need competencies. And when at the level of politicians, institutions, and companies, we have to understand what we are talking about. Otherwise, we risk to take a path that is the wrong one and is a cost for everybody. And we see where we are. The issue is that we have been misled because we thought that we can switch from one energy to another energy. It's not like that. As Francesco said, we made investment for a long time, 20 years, on infrastructure. Now we have to change, and that can be do gradually. Otherwise, we are going to hurt ourselves.
And based on the market reaction, the way the European cap has been drafted was not that competent and skillful. Minister, would you like to add something on that? Please.
Let me add to that. I mean, maybe you don't know. About the last COP 26, a text was presented to be added to Paris Agreement that we should cut off all fossil fuel. So if you wanted to have a legal document on Paris Agreement for the climate change saying that countries should stop fossil fuel, how can you ask companies to invest in infrastructure of gas, for example? How can you ask more exploration in oil? So you're cutting a big part of the energy source by legislation and international legislation. So this is the issues I think we have. Now, all banking sectors, they have a compulsory to have their own ESG plan. Part of the ESG plan, how much they are funding fossil fuel projects. And all of them are backing out of this investment to comply with their ESG plan. This is part of the issues we're facing today. And this has been done, 7, 8, 10 years ago. So we're sending the world a mixed signals. Do we want energy now or we don't? Do you want us to increase producing or not? Yeah. How can we increase producing at the same time we can't invest? So this is the mixed signal.
That was the conversation in Glasgow when the discussion was, among phase down or phase out fossil fuels. Now the situation has completely changed, and the rhetoric we are using, the discussion is different. And Minister Orkab, one of the key questions is, will we have enough energy to face next winter and the winter ahead, and especially coming from Algeria, for example? Do you think that, having said what you did in the last 6 months, the investments underway, the projects underway, put you in the position to pump more gas in the pipelines towards Europe, and at what level?
Algeria is a fair provider, and that will fulfill with its engagements. And we, in the program of our company of hydrocarbons in Algeria, we've implemented with our partners a program to supply and to guarantee the supply for the demand. So we guarantee it as regards the whole demand for Europe. So we are also working to develop with our partners and to increase the production on natural gas. So there will also be many projects to come on the very short term with the existing infrastructures. Now, if you allow me, the Mediterranean basin, Mediterranean area offers a real opportunity to work together in partnership, and it should increase the production. And we also need to have much more diversification in the energy mix in our country or elsewhere. So we are working in order to diversify the energy mix in order to produce also natural gas, and make that natural gas is the energy that can go with this energy transition. So we need much more energy, much more investment in this energy. So in the Mediterranean region, there is a real opportunity to increase this partnership from the north to the south, and with many technologies, trainings, and transfer of competencies. And this will increase our chances to double our production and to work together for the energy security.
Interesting perspective. Now, Sheikh, you already mentioned a collapse, an historic collapse in oil prices in the past as a source of the decline in investment in infrastructure, and we're paying the price for that currently. But you also welcomed, I think it was last month, the decision of the OPEC Plus to cut production of 2 million barrels per day. And what do you think this is the right time to reduce production? Well, the world is starving for energy.
We're right now renewing our term contracts for next year at KPC. So where I'm talking to my customers, I'm asking my customers what they are requiring for next year. And the straight answer from all of them is we're not requiring more oil. We are actually demanding about the same, perhaps even less. Just because of a fear of recession, a commitment obviously on volumes, and a fear of a potential recession, maybe one yet now, or we may avoid it, hopefully. But from what I gather from our customers is that we're fine where we are. The big difference here is there's a disconnect between actual oil production and what you're seeing on the energy side, especially in Europe, gas. And those are, as you said at the beginning, are completely decoupled. The oil market is in relative balance at this point. And thankfully, you have an OPEC minister, an OPEC Plus minister. You can ask them for these. I'm an executive at a company, so I can't tell you very much about what will be happening there. But from our perspective, we see the market well supplied. Now, the question then becomes, what do you do for the future? And I think just going back to a couple of points that we were talking about earlier, you cannot vilify this industry and expect an outcome where you have a stable and orderly energy transition. By vilifying this industry, you cut off funds from it. You cut off the ability of this industry to continue to operate within its license. For example, we are doing what we can here in Italy, and I'll add my voice to my friend Francesco's. I'm keeping my thanks to the Italian government right to the end, because, as he said, I feel at home, and I feel almost as a host here, because we have been in Italy for decades, and are the second largest under our Q8 brands, the second largest provider of fuel in Italy. So this is something where we feel at home. But it's also very important that host governments continue to recognize the importance of further investment through a stable and welcoming economic and tax regime that allows and encourages this type of investment for the future. So by virtue of just building just what we've done over the past year. We've reduced our carbon intensity within our gas stations here. We have 2,800 gas stations throughout Europe. We've reduced the carbon intensity by 58% just by blending and by taking actions such as greening of our stations. So we have to continue to work together, and there's a process where we have to continue to work together, not to vilify each other.
Descalzi, are you okay with that? Do you feel like you've been vilified in the past?
Me?
No, you as a company,
Not
clearly,
personally,
because the
not personally,
mentioning the company.
Not personally, not as a company, as a sector. As a sector, yes, surely. The issue, I think, that we continue to repeat the same things, but now I think that is clear to everybody that, as I said, the demand in terms of, I talk about gas because for Europe now gas is inelastic, so it's always there. So if you have to put in our mind a question mark. If that demand is inelastic, what we can do. So that is the issue. We have to increase renewable, perfect, but we have to understand that when you talk about refinery, chemicals, ammonia, or steel, or other heavy industry, how you can do just with renewables, without batteries, without giving continuity.
How do you reply, Francesco La Camera, and what's your takeaway? Because we have really to wrap it up now.
Well, my takeaway is that our narrative has to be built on the respect of the IPCC work on the 1.5 Celsius. There is a way that fossil fuel will be declined, but our understanding, Irina never say that we have to stop to invest in gas. Never. Because we think that if we have to decline the use of gas, cannot be disruptive. Should be made in a way that is coherent with a swift decline. Naturally, company has to be very careful in investing in a wise way, not to produce stranded assets. So that's in their interest. So we have to be balanced. We have to think that we have to get where we have to get. The region, everyone is committed to go net zero at a certain period. And what is important to say, my last comment, this is the discussion we had made very clear how close Europe and the MENA region are. In our point of view, the next energy market, especially when we talk about hydrogen, will be regional. Here, I think there is one region that is trying to form the new energy market here.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the talks will continue here at MED today and tomorrow. Thanks a lot. Let's have a round of applause to our speakers. Thank you so much. Okay.
Recording stopped.